have experience working on television shows, but you were a staff writer. You were never a producer. You were never, no one ever answered to you except for maybe the writer's assistant getting coffee sometimes. Yeah. So you were never in charge of that many people. And then suddenly you're in charge of a giant multi-million-dollar production with hundreds of employees. So I'm sure that was real easy.
Yeah. So yeah, this was, again, the first pilot I ever sold, and it did get picked up to pilot. So yeah, I was one of the lucky few people to get a pilot picked up, which again means then they're going to shoot just the first episode. So again, it doesn't mean you have a show on the air. It's everything comes in stages. Everything sounds like at every step, someone in my family was like, whoa, so you have a show? You're like, no. So yeah, so my pilot got picked up. Then you're thrust into, now we have to produce this pilot. I was very lucky, again, to be on Jane the Virgin, where I got production experience. I actually got not just being a line producer's assistant, but those 2 freelances I was on set for. I got to produce those episodes as the writer on set, and another episode that was not mine. So I had produced 3 episodes of Jane the Virgin. I'd been on set. I understood how production worked. I will say now, because I was a staff writer. I was not some high-level producer. I was not thrust in charge of this whole operation, which is very good because I wouldn't have wanted to be.
It would have been very irresponsible to let you be in charge.
They were like, just make every decision. Along the way, during that development process, that writing process, Fake Empire had put me, basically partnered me with a showrunner who, his name's Warren Chu Leonard. He's wonderful. He was, more experienced writer, an executive producer who knew how a lot of this worked. He had worked with them before. So he was sort of technically he was in charge. It's sort of an odd relationship, creator, showrunner. It depends on, we tried to be sort of equal, but, neither of us had produced a pilot before. So this was still exciting and new. And then Fake Empire, our producers, had produced many pilots. Right. Which was helpful to us in that they, were sort of able to plug and play, like, okay, we know we have this great director in mind. We met with the director. They were like, great, okay, that decision's made. Because it's like, basically the show got picked up, the last day of January, and you have to shoot it come March. So you're immediately have to hire 100 people and go really, really fast.
For those following along, this is January 2020. That's a little bit of foreshadowing for where the story is going. So January 2020, you're hiring you're hiring directors and line producers and crew. And
director, line producer. And so again, thankfully we had Fake Empire as our sort of machine who had all these relationships, had done a lot of this stuff. We had to choose where to shoot. It was like, do we shoot in LA, Vancouver, Atlanta? We wound up shooting in Atlanta. And then we had to, so it was not just me, it was me and Warren and Fake Empire. And then we brought our director in. So it was sort of a cabal of decision makers. So, but as
like you said, that's the collaborative.
Yeah, everything
part.
Is collaborative. And then as the sort of creator, people did, I had a voice and I was able to, express my desires. And I remember we had a call with our music supervisor. That was like the initial call, just to be like, hey, what do you think? And I was expecting producers to talk a lot on this call, have ideas. We got on the call, the producer, first thing he says is, so Merigan, what were you thinking about the music? And I was like, oh God, right, this is my show. So I had to, speak to that, which was really nice. I don't think, you can get shoved aside as a sort of a powerless, sort of lower level person on your own project. But I had a lot of, input, and I also got to learn from really experienced, awesome people. And then we went into casting, which is a whole other crazy thing. I had seen the casting process from the agency side because I worked on talent desks. So I worked with actors and scheduled all those auditions and got to see how it worked. And now I got to see it from the other side, being in the casting office, in the room as actors auditioned. It was really cool. But yeah, that was like, I spent most of February 2020 in a small windowless room. And in retrospect, maybe not the best way to spend it.
So you were going to go, you had to go out of town, you were going to film, you were out of town you personally were physically out of town in March.
The show was scheduled to shoot, I think, March 24th. So I left, the crew had already been certain crew members had already been, had created the production office. It's sort of a weird, you create a whole company from scratch. Like you said, it's, right. They bought, rented an office and they're hiring people and they are starting to location scout. And then, so the director was there, I think maybe a week before us, me and Warren and one of the producers went out, March 8th, which I will say I went with some trepidation. This was, COVID was in the news. It wasn't looking great. I think a lot of people had a lot of naivete. I'm very grateful that I did not have that naivete. I sort of was like, this is not looking great. But yeah, I got to be there in Atlanta for a week. We were in a production office with my, name on the door of my office that I shared with Warren. And we got to go to all these production meetings and go on location scouts and make cool decisions. And it was just really cool to have all these really talented people working on something that sort of came from my mind. Our costume designer designed all these incredible, had these great, wonderful ideas for the show, and the production designer, like everything was just really cool. And I was very excited about it. And then
did you guys actually roll camera?
We never did. We didn't even have our camera test, which is sort of just, they do it just to get the look of the show with the actors. Our actors hadn't yet flown out to Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
So we were still about 2 weeks out from shooting. We were shooting a little bit late when everything shut down, or a week and a half out from shooting. March 13th, 2020, sort of everything shut down. Again, I was prepared for this. I sort of felt like this could happen. And so, we sort of, we flew back to LA, and there was the sense of like, well, maybe we can come back in April, but nobody knew at that point what was really going on. And so, so once I got back to LA, then, the network had to make some decisions and figure stuff out. How are we going to make they had 6 pilots that they were supposed to shoot. Some of them had shot a couple of days, some had shot a camera test, but they didn't, normally they have a whole pilot to watch to make a decision. So what they had me do was write up sort of a season pitch, here laying out what I thought would happen in the first season. Because again, I hadn't pitched the show to them, so they really only had the pilot to work with. So they wanted to see where I wanted it to go. And they also commissioned me to write an episode 2 script, which was great. Again, I got paid for that. But it was difficult. Normally, episode 2 is widely regarded by many people as the hardest episode to write, because what the pilot is, and then you have to like recreate that magic in episode 2 and send it off in some direction. If this is your pilot, which direction are you going? And so I had to write that sort of largely by myself. Warren was also, heavily involved and very helpful. But then the network sort of decided while I was writing that episode 2, they made decisions, and their decisions were, we're going to pick up couples of these shows that we have seen some proof of concept of, and the other ones we're going to just put back in the pile for next season. Like those scripts, I didn't have to rewrite the script. They were just putting it back in the decision pile for the 2021 season to see which they would pick up then. Sort of the show was sort of still alive for another year as I wrote episode 2, and as I was still in contact with my producers and doing all the, it was still alive, but it wasn't, I wasn't super optimistic it was going to get picked up to pilot a second time, mostly because it's a very timely pilot, and I think times changed very rapidly with many, COVID and election and insurrection. There was a lot that happened that made my pilot almost feel quaint. Last February or January 2021 is when they ultimately said, okay, we're not moving forward with this. It is sort of gone. It is done. You are released. So that's sort of what happens with most ideas and most shows is, you put all this work into it, you make a script, you can get to any of those points. You can. Yeah.
Well, usually you at least shoot the pilot before they decide to not pick it up soon.
But even if you shoot the pilot, it's like you did all this work and you were on set and you did all of this and still it doesn't get picked up. So I think, nothing is guaranteed. So I wasn't shocked by this. And I was ultimately just very grateful that I got the experience I did in early 2020, getting to be, a producer of my own pilot and learn all of this. I feel like I learned so much just through the development process and the pilot process.
So I think that's like a good place to end on. Like even though your path is sort of, again, the classic one that everybody has heard, none of it has been smooth the entire time. And even the dream of selling a pilot and getting it shot, nobody's fault. But it didn't get made, and I feel like that sucks, but it's also like your attitude towards it, I think, is something that everybody should sort of learn from. Like, you're still very positive about it. You're still working. You haven't like
I haven't given up yet.
Like you're no matter what stage you're at, where like you said, it could stop at any point, and you just keep going at it. And you've been here for 10 years and still doing it.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing about this industry, is just you're sort of always living in uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen next week, next month. It's always unclear, but can be bad. It could be like, oh, what if I get fired, or what if this opportunity falls through? But it could be really good too. What if the right person reads my script and suddenly I get a phone call that they want to develop it? Like, so many things can happen. And I think you just sort of have to be prepared to ride the ride and see what happens, and do your best to sort of, make sure you're ready for it, and, do the work so that when the calls come, or when the good or bad calls happen, you're prepared mentally to weather that and move forward and do the next thing.